Video game horror has always been fascinating to me. It's the idea of actively partaking in the journey of being scared instead of just being an otherwise passive spectator to everything going on in front of you, as you would with horror in movies or TV shows, for example. And it's that involvement that I feel horror excels in video games. Now, there's a whole conversation to be had about the nuances of horror along with its subgenres and how certain types of media are more fitting for certain subgenres. However, Oak's word echoed, there's a time and place for everything, but not now. But as for specific horror subgenres that fare better in video games, in my opinion, that's Yandere horror. For those unfamiliar, Yandere is a Japanese term that is a combination of two words, Yanderu, which translates to be sick in English, and Dere Dere, which in this context means love-struck. It's a character archetype typically seen in anime where the character, usually female, is lovingly obsessed with someone else in the story. And when I say obsessed, I mean horrifyingly so. Like, they will literally eclipse anyone who they think poses a threat to their totally healthy, equally two-way love. Yep, perfectly normal. Your Honor, listen, she was getting in the way of me and my Pokemon and just happened to fall onto my chainsaw. You know how it be. Often, it can start out as a pretty normal kind of love towards someone, you know, like a work crush, but then it can slowly become more and more over time, especially if the feelings aren't mutual. I think this is called a reverse gap. Look, I'll be real, even as someone who's seen over 100 anime at this point, so a certified weeb in other words, this is all going over my head. And you know, I kinda get it. The idea of someone being head over heels for you and only you is an enticing one, but that's really the only part of the yandere trope that I'm down with because, I don't know man, crilling others because they simply talk to you is a huge turn off in bed. That aside, by no means is yandere horror a new thing. Obsessive horror is fairly common and understandably so because, not to dance around it, obsession is a very real and sometimes horrific thing in real life too. And what is horror in media but reality in its most unfiltered form? With added storytelling for the sake of keeping our attention. Point is, yandere horror has a fair bit of history in media. Obviously originated in anime as far back as 2005. Hang on. That doesn't look right. Surely it's not that recent, right? You're telling me I'm older than Yandere herself? I'm basically dust at this point, man. Impromptu notes here. The character Lucy from Alphen Lied. Who cares? Is considered a yandere, and the anime premiered in 2004. Fandom really is the website of all time. Anyway, when it comes to the first depiction of a yandere, you can trace it all the way back to the 10th century with Kiyohime, a Japanese folklore character, though adaptations of the story are widely inconsistent, or Lady Rokujo, who appears in the 11th century novel The Tale of Genji, both of whom are referred to as yokais. However, as genuinely interesting as the topic of yokai is, and hell, if you want to go further back, then you can argue that the Greek god Hera is a yandere. We're not here for that today. So to bring the point back around to where it's most relevant, when it comes to media like anime and video games, truth be told, I haven't had much exposure to the subject. Or at least that was the case until about 2019 when I played Doki Doki Literature Club for the first time. Now, for DDLC, there are two yanderes present. The first is obviously Yuri, who in Act 2 just has her personality amplified tenfold, eventually spilling jam everywhere after you either accept or refuse her confession of love. She wins either way here, let's be real. The world of DDLC is a psychological hellhole. But then there's also Monica. I don't see many people clocking her as a yandere, when she's very much sporting the typical yandere approach of deleting others who get in her way of you, until it's only you and her, but not you as in the player character, you as you behind the screen. In essence, I guess that brings her body count up to 4 because she indirectly offed the player character by making them obsolete. In recent years though, I haven't been too in touch with the yandere trope, only recently watching through the yandere anime Future Diary / Miraniki for the sake of the script. However, a few months before that, I came across a little game after hearing many people talk about it. Catching that initial internet wave of popularity that any new thing hopes for, oddly reminiscent of the wave DDLC rode when it was initially released in 2017. My yapping aside, I am, of course, talking about MiSide. Ooh, bars, weak ones to be fair, but still. As if my subtle foreshadowing has not given it away, MiSide is a yandere horror game released by the Russian development team iHasto in December 2024, and it is one of those games that has implanted itself in my brain and will never leave. From that alone, you can probably assume I think very highly of this game, and yes, I do. But what's the fun in a single sentence review? I want to take you through MiSide and show you why it's one of the best yandere experiences I've ever had. Look, I honestly don't know if it's pronounced MiSide or MiSide, but I lean more towards the latter because then I can say stuff like, let's go on a journey through MiSide, and it just works. We start with a cute title screen featuring MiSide herself. Okay, and this is actually Mita, and you will learn to love her in time, either at her own hands or maybe through your own volition. There are a few different title screens you can run into, like Mita winking or showing the peace sign. These are the two you'll most likely see when booting it up, but there is a secret menu screen with a super low chance of appearing, just to tempt you into finding it. You'll know when you do. Upon clicking new game, we wake up in our room.
Hey, you. You're finally awake.
It's a cozy little place, maybe could do with taking the trash out more often, but there's a little plane we can play over an acute interaction. Absolute cinema. We look over at our phone and someone sent us a message telling us about a new game. Look buddy, I don't know what your online safety lessons were like in school, but I'd at least be cautious about downloading some random game that was messaged to me. This is how most creepypastas start out, come on man! Downloading the game anyway, we go into it and it looks to be a Tamagotchi-like game where we take care of this character called Mita by doing the usual kind of stuff, cleaning up her clothes, making food for her, playing minigames to buy her stuff like a mini TV, and helping her retrieve a brush that she doesn't remember where she put. Oh, well that's unusual. Not exactly where I keep a chainsaw, but I doubt you had any options given the lack of garage or a basement! In all fairness, Mita did tell us not to look in the oven, but who are we for following orders? Either way, it's an odd thing for her to just have, and she gets defensive about us finding it. We also have to move a wardrobe to a different spot for seemingly no reason. Honestly, I guess she just wanted to redecorate. And on the final day with her, after like a month of playing the game, the screen zooms in a foreboding way like something's about to happen, but nothing does. Or so we think. Suddenly, we're just in a different place. Turns out, this is actually the little Mita's house we've been seeing in our game, and I want you to take note of the photos scattered around the house here. They don't resemble the design we've been familiar with up until this point, sporting a different haircut. An odd thing to bring up, I'm sure you're thinking people can change their hairstyle throughout their lives, it's not unreasonable, but this will become relevant later. Looking around the house, it is rather cozy, but we have a task to find these 3 items in order to activate the teleporter. Girl, why do you have that? How do you have that? Nevertheless, after finding this random assortment of items, we're transported to a more unsettling version of the house, almost like the upside down from Stranger Things. Yeah, it's kind of right in there with the unsettling atmosphere, and I think this is something MiSide excels in. Being real, there are no scares here, it's just dim lighting and all we have to do is find 4 batteries around the house, but it's such a good atmospheric shift that lays out what to expect from the game. And unlike DDLC, which takes about 4 to 5 hours to hit you with its horror, MiSide begins laying the table immediately. Now, DDLC's execution is extremely effective and part of the reason why it became so popular, with its Act 1 runtime going on just long enough to make you think the psychological horror tag on Steam was just a prank, and then taking a sledgehammer to your head full of whimsy, but bear with me as we go along because I think MiSide's pacing is just as good. Well, after finding the batteries and even venturing down into this unnecessarily creepy hallway, we willingly step into the teleporter once more because it was such a good idea the first time, and we're back? Or at least we're in a scarily similar location. And after wandering aimlessly for a few seconds, we turn around and a woman! This is Mita. Yep, the same one from the mobile game that we were playing at the start, only now sporting more polygons. Is that the right way to say that? Understandably, we have questions, and thankfully she's more than willing to hear us out, not before saying how she's been spying on us through our phone camera. Damn, the boomers were right for once. We're just a chill guy, however, so the amount of invasion of privacy is no big deal to us. And we ask her the most pressing question of, how the hell did we even get here? Like, there's no evidence of interdimensional travel yet. So, unless she's keeping a secret from me that would really help me see my wife again, things aren't adding up. Luckily, she explains everything to us in a way we totally understand and makes perfect sense. By the way, see the school uniform on the side of the wardrobe? This is actually an unlockable outfit for Mita, which you can get if you interact with it after she does her whole introduction. There are 3 you can unlock throughout, and despite these being classed as secrets, which I wanted to keep in their own section, I will bring them up anyway when they become relevant. I want to also make note of the dialogue that appears in front of the characters and falls off as they finish speaking. I really dig this kind of thing, I think it adds more personality to the game. Right, so we're actually in the game with Mita now, and we take a trip around the house once more with her eagerly in tow this time. We watch this universe's equivalent of brain rot, we take a cute selfie together, look as happy as I am when I don't get a response back on my job application for the 234th time in a row, have a brief staring contest that flusters Mita, and then prepare some food. Not before Mita performs instant transmission like she wasn't already in the room with you. So we have a little mini game here, I guess, but ignoring the fact this doofus is cutting towards his hand rather than away, that's basic safety, my guy. MiSide has plenty of these little moments throughout, where you're doing something other than wandering around like you're in the back rooms, and they're all really neat. Of course, they aren't all this basic, this is mostly a teaser for what's to come. Mita then asks us to fetch some scissors from the bathroom so we can open some sauce packets easily. I doubt you're that weak, but everyone has a method to their madness. And as we're about to get them, the air vent panel comes loose, and like a moth drawn to a flame, we go over to it and find these cartridges similar to the ones we saw in one of the 2 minigames with Mita earlier, but these ones have names on them. An odd find, but there are probably at least 2 games on the market at this point, so the idea of a game being called Cindy isn't too outlandish, especially if it's an indie game. Ever heard of buy milk inside a bag of milk inside a bag of milk? Cindy's reasonable compared to that. Regardless, we sit at the table back in the kitchen ready to eat a finer meal than I've regularly served myself, all with a special sauce that may or may not be laced with aphrodisiac. And damn, it must be a strong one because it kicks in right away. However, our guy can only get so hard. That's awful. I'm so sorry. And he falls... oh, good lord. And he falls to his knees as Mita guides us to the bathroom to take some pills that we should probably be more worried about, given the whole lacing thing that got us here. Mita's suddenly gone though, so we go find her in a rearranged version of the house. Huh. Were we really out that long to the point they reconstructed the house around us? Well, yes, but actually no. It's just something Mita can do if she wants to, because on a power scaling level, she's basically a god in this world. And to her, the corridor approach to house design just doesn't make sense, which is fair enough, straight under boring. Insert Mario Kart World joke here. I can't really have any input on it though. I have not played World yet, because I can't afford to Switch 2. We also run into a weird oddity where the next room over needs a second to load. I won't lie, if this ever happened, the ensuing existential crisis would be catastrophic, but Mita casually says that just happens sometimes because of the whole being in a game thing, where assets won't be loaded if they don't need to be to save on RAM. Okay. After a moment though, we can head back into the living room where we decide to play a game with Mita. There are two we can play: Dairy Scandal, a very simplistic 2D fighter, or Penguin Pals, a game where you collect the most snowballs. Obviously, I go for Dairy Scandal because I'm totally goated at 2D fighters, and I swear to Zanza, she cheats at this. Like, you can easily win against Mita in the first couple of rounds, but by the final round, she's tearing through you because she's taking less damage than what she's doing to you. When it was equal beforehand, like, do something, ref, come on! As for Penguin Piles, it's pretty simple, just collect more snowballs than Mita does in both rounds. By winning both of these, though you don't have to do so consecutively, you unlock the Santa outfit for Mita. The only good reason I could think of for this was the fact this game released in December, so, you know, a fitting seasonal gift. Unless you're playing outside of December, forget it. Shortly after, she'll play us in a card game. If you ever heard of Top Trumps, it's that. Just choose a card that has a higher numbered stat for what's relevant, e.g. health. While playing though, we hear a strange knocking noise. This had been going on for a while already, but only now does our guy choose to ask about it. However, like how parents react when you ask them where the money they owe you is, that they said they totally pay you back, Mita acts like she doesn't hear anything, really encompassing the 3 Gs, gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss. Since we're not completely insane, at least not yet, we head over and investigate the wardrobe before Mita swiftly steps in front to block us. It's no secret she's hiding something, and she soon lets us find out for ourselves. Now before sending us back to the more hostile version of the house we transitioned through earlier, but she's up the ante a little. We have to find a key to the door behind the wardrobe, and this might as well be Abyss, and heading towards the bathroom, we come across a Sayori cosplayer, but the door slams on us before we can see the body closer. When we can go in there though, we get trapped momentarily and are forced to watch a bunch of hands get crushed in the door. I mean, fair enough, that's the correct reaction to innumerable creepy hands trying to pry the only safety between you and them open. No arguments from me, honestly. And as we figured, we're not alone. There's a vastly more hostile looking Mita off in the kitchen. And just like any dumbass horror movie protagonist, we go to check out the danger and find nothing. She just teleported out there. But there are etchings on the wall now asking us to come find us, so says that. After a bit of wandering, we head back into the kitchen and find Mita? A very scared Mita, and rightly so, as we're encroached upon by a demon hellspawn. I'd like to point out, in my initial playthrough, which I have abridged on the channel, I had quite a reserved reaction to this. How's it? You alright? Oh. Jump scares tend to be hit and miss for me these days, mostly misses, thanks to the likes of FNAF, but there's a moment later that always gets me. Not to say it's not an effective scare, it's the first instance of a jump scare, so to speak, in this game, but I don't think a quick heart rate jump was the intention here. Rather, a way to further unsettle you with the idea of the looming danger becoming more and more active. After we follow this lower half of Mita that I could make jokes about, but past me already did. If it's a hole, it's a hole. No, I'm so sorry. And retrieve the key, we find another Mita locked in a cage? This is Kind Mita. As she explains, she's actually the real Mita of this world, and the so-called Mita upstairs is fittingly named Crazy Mita. Kind Mita hands us this ring as she gives us the task of making it to the game's core to reset Crazy Mita's character to stop her from being crazy. A literal case of I can fix her, because she has something awful planned for us. This ring will help us navigate through older versions of the game, except it doesn't, and there's literally only one case where it actively helps you, and that's avoiding Crazy Mita when she comes down here into the basement to hunt you. Yeah, I'm pretty bad at this part. Luckily, her intention seems to be to mess with us rather than to actively end our subscription to life, well, unless we run directly into her, because surely she would gun for us the moment she picks us up in her peripheral vision, but I guess her vision is limited to occurring like with enemies in older games. An admittedly neat detail, honestly, if that was intentional. We soon find ourselves in this void, a passageway between dimensions, I guess you could describe it, and we find another player wandering the hallways. However, he's too far gone and down bad for Mita, so we just leave him to it, despite his injuries and the fact he's been here for over a year already. There are also these weird little chibi characters that we run into. Much like the guy we just encountered, I think these little guys are other players that have gotten trapped in here, just more marketable. We continue to wander the halls until we find our way to Mita again. There's an arcade machine next to her that you can interact with, and it's actually a fully playable racing game that even has a boss fight at the end. It's generally really cool that there's one other way to add something like this, and there's more to come too. Nothing comes from it, mind you, at least nothing important to the story, just some optional dialogue from Mita and a couple of achievements, but it's still super neat. Mita says she has something to show us, or rather, someone who can help us in our journey to the core. In truth, it's another variant of Mita, but straight up, this is the best version of Mita in my opinion. Her name is Cappie because she wears this cool hat. She's full of energy and good vibes, but turns out she's actually been reset because she doesn't remember anything that she and Mita discussed about their plan. I find this interesting because I had to wonder what a non-default Cappie would look like. Hanging out with her for the short time we do, she's extremely fun to be around, so would she have retained the behaviour and just have been more determined? It's interesting to think about, but either way, yeah, she's a lot of fun. In my bridge playthrough, I had a counter for how many times I said she was cute, and I think I might have missed a couple of times because, yeah, she's just got this lovable energy to her that I hard vibe with, like she does when she's idling. And like, can I just talk about how fun it is to meet different variants of the same character in the different worlds? Multiverse stuff is kind of overdone these days, but the idea continues to be interesting to me because, yeah, it's fun to wonder how certain things might be in an alternate universe, even if it is just thing but evil half the time. Mita needs to reprogram the ring's set route to the core, so she asks us to spend some time with Cappie, and we're given the option to play a few games with her. Either a DDR-style rhythm game in the living room that is honestly a lot of fun, if just to see Cappie dancing first, or a reaction-based game in the kitchen where we have to be the first to press this red button, should it say to, or be hit with a squeaky hammer. Before the game starts, we can see Cappie going through her inventory to find the hammer, and I don't know why exactly, but it's just funny watching her do this. Girl, why do you have that on you? Yeah, for some reason, this version of Cappie is kind of crude. Not only with what you just saw, but when we can ask about her hat when first meeting her, our guy mentions her gloves too and why she just doesn't take them off before Cappie's just maybe taking something else off. I mean, I'm not opposed, I mean, if you're down. Maybe it's something to do with the playful personality type, I don't know, I ain't usually this happy. Oh, she's also got this cool guitar. I think that's an important mention. Mita is soon to finish reprogramming the ring, and she hands it back to us before she sends us back into the fray after a brief interlude with my new best friend. Sorry boys. We find ourselves going through a winding corridor. Again, and again. If it weren't obvious by the name of the chapter popping up as we entered, we're stuck in a loop of the same corridor. But the further we go, the more things start to deteriorate, with the walls eventually having writing on them and even referencing an obscure, incredible Mario horror ROM hack. Good pull. After a while though, we gotta solve a puzzle where we have to match the time of the clock to the others around the place, and in the next room ever, we find the entity that resides here, a demon child. Now, usually when it comes to demon children, my first course of action is to claim on them, but this is no demon. This is Tiny Mita, a version of Mita that's had her version abandoned or cut off and now wanders the in-betweens, similar to how we did earlier, just with no end, all after Crazy Mita was torturing her for her body part, jealous of how cute she was. Yep. That alone makes you feel sorry for her, but the way she tries to cling to you, just wanting you to stay and play with her to keep her company after being alone for so long, man, it's heartbreaking, honestly. Unfortunately, we can't and have to keep pressing forward, where we're soon legging it from some other monstrosity that's chasing us. Our only option here is to jump out the window into the void, otherwise keep looping forever and eventually be caught by whatever it was. But that turns out to be a mistake too, because Crazy Mita channels a titan and tries to grab us. Luckily, it seems as though she was only messing with us as we find ourselves somewhere with another small Mita. Like, a really small one. This is Chibi Mita, or Mini Mita, Tiny Mita, or even Chibi Mita.fbx. Apparently the .fbx is a reference to the same file format that allows for, I'm gonna butcher this, interoperability between digital context. Interoperability between digital content creation applications, whatever that means. But more importantly, she wants to help us. Not before insulting us so damn Sunday. Yeah, this one's sassy, probably to make up for her stature, but even with that, she's always open to helping the hopelessly lost. So at least we haven't hit a dead end. Arceus help us if we ran into unhelpful Mita instead. In a callback to the start of the game, we help this Chibi Mita locate the key to the workshop she just has sitting next door. Girl, where's your bed? Don't tell me you're sleeping in a chair, or whatever. We help her with a few other things, and then we get this big key, like, even compared to us, this is huge, wow. We have the option to properly talk to Chibi Mita now, and she has this nice message when we ask her why she's helping us. What makes you so special that you don't deserve help? And I think that's just really nice. Using the giant ass key on the door, we go through and we're in danger again. Or so at least the lighting would suggest. This is for a different reason, however, as in the next room ever, we have to navigate through pitch black around other Mitas and Dummies. Oh boy. After a bit of finagling, we run into another Mita, Shorthead Mita. Damn, is that her only identifiable personality trait? I suppose we ran into Cappie earlier, but that was more of a nickname. She advises us to stay quiet and head towards an arcade machine somewhere, so after more finagling, we're now playing this minigame where we have to identify correct Mitas. Think That's Not My Neighbour, if you've heard of that. But the signs of a faulty Mita are pretty obvious. In truth, so long as you at least scan them first to find out the bone quantity in such matches, you don't need to repeat the rest of the process. So yeah, this kind of reveals that all the Mitas we've come across so far are all just dummy robots with skin inserted over them. A skinwalker in a literal sense, I guess, and that the crazy Mita is one of the corrupted models if we hadn't put that together already. I appreciate that they thought of a way to explain how every player has their own Mita to take care of, and it's not just the same one across all devices, even if that may cause an insane existential crisis for anyone went rogue. No, I see the issue now. When we asked Shorthead Mita about our findings after she suddenly perched behind us on the stepladder, vibing a lot like Cappie actually, suggesting the personality types of the Mitas aren't truly all unique and elements that sometimes be used in other models, she rightly reacts to how we put it, saying it sounds extra creepy even though she's wholly familiar with the reality of her situation. This minigame was also warning us of the upcoming danger of how the corrupt dummies are super dangerous and not just in a physical sense, but a mental one too, especially for me. We can talk to her about a few other things, namely how traversing between versions works, which is a lengthy explanation using the chalkboard behind her, as well as how Crazy Mita is essentially able to cut through versions in trying to get to you. She also mentions having formed this plan with another Mita variant, whom we have yet to see, Pretty Mita. Full of herself, I see. I can't wait to meet her. I'll let that one sit for a few seconds. Something I want to bring attention to, do you remember when I said to keep note of the photos we initially saw in the house? Well, that's Shorthead Mita. Or at least a version of Shorthead Mita. Personally, I believe this Shorthead Mita was supposed to be the Mita we first met because she's the one we were taking care of. But because Crazy Mita tampered with the game and was the one who brought us here, that didn't turn out to be the case, which led her to be banished here, and now she helps the new Mitas out in this world. The game doesn't all point to this being the case, and if this was, there'd have been something else about it by now, even though we spent very little time there. But there's nothing wrong with a bit of theorising, even if I am kind of terrible at it sometimes. Moving forward, we have our first hostile run-in with the Dummies as one sitting in a chair before it rushes us and takes a chunk out of our arm. What kind of bug in the code would give a robot a taste for human flesh? Like, that's just insane, man. That's not the biggest problem though, because we soon discover that the Dummies are weeping angels. If you don't know what a weeping angel is, I'm about to ruin your day. In the sci-fi series Doctor Who, there's a particular villain known as the weeping angel, and it's hands down one of the scariest things in fiction in my opinion. Why? Well, every time you blink or look away in this case, the angel will move closer to you until it's fully closed to distance, and then just turn you into one or take your soul and puppeteer it to other people. Fun. I hate this type of enemy. It's genuinely one way to always scare me in games, either through sheer anxiety alone, or just suddenly having them present, because who the hell wants to deal with an enemy type like this? On a gameplay standpoint, it sucks, but on a horror standpoint, it's incredible despite how much I hate it. If that went over your head, think SCP-173, which is what the entity is based on, if you're more familiar with that, or think red light green light in terms of the gameplay. Granted, for the Dummies, it never has to be a direct line of vision, you can get away with keeping them in your peripheral, but my anxiety goes through the roof whenever something like this comes up. I mean, sure, the Dummies are automatically less scary than the Angels or 173 because you can actually see them moving, whereas both of those essentially teleport, and the Dummies will only bite your arm off instead of snapping your neck or puppeting your soul, but still, I hate these things. Return them to the depths of hell from where they came! Following my nightmares incarnate, we make it out to what looks to be similar to one of the areas from Silent Hill 4 The Room, which I only know about thanks to Totally Pointless TV. Shout out to him, by the way, he makes awesome video essays. While on this walkway, it looks like it's a tundra with an incredible view of the moon? Yeah, we'll go with that. We gotta solve these connect the dot puzzles. I must say, in my initial playthrough, I tanked at these, especially the last one. Now though, I can do it in one shot. Now that's what I call character development. Crazy Mita then drops a fridge on us. Fortunately, she misses, but it's not like she meant to crush us intentionally. In a kind of funny shift in control, we can just choose to walk away from Mita as she's talking to us. Maybe a little rude, but she did just try to turn us into crushed ice, so I think it's excusable. Carrying on across the walkway and after staring through the windows into another version of the game, presumably, we find ourselves in a strange digital landscape, what I imagine to be a so-called bridge for the game's code, at least in a real-world context. Out of the arriving cable car hops out another Chibi Mita. This Chibi isn't the same one as we saw earlier, but I'll explain more later. Patience you must have, young Padawan. That's awful. Boarding the cable car, we meet yet another Mita variant, Mitaphone. Get it? It's... yeah, never mind. Jumping over to the other side, we have to play this minigame where we shoot down these flying enemies, and after all my years of subpar Overwatch gameplay, this was no big deal. It's one minigame after another actually, because when we dock, there's an arcade machine off to the right with a game called Heator, and this is straight up Doom. Yep, this is the original Doom, alright. And while the only Doom game I've ever played at this time is Doom Eternal, but only for a brief period, despite really enjoying it, I got a kick out of this because who doesn't enjoy Doom? You run and jump around shooting enemies with powerful guns and otherwise very basic but cathartic as hell gameplay loop, it's awesome. All these otherwise interludes between the scares are great examples of things the devs absolutely didn't have to add, but did anyway, and I feel it really makes the game feel a lot more in depth and, most importantly, fun. It also shows the iHastra dev team is full of talent, showing key know-how of other genres. You may have noticed the pacing on MiSide so far, going between scares and downtime constantly, and while some people might have an issue with this in a horror game, I'll get to my thoughts on that soon. Following that, we head down a hallway that leads to a dead end with a picture hanging on the wall showing a shadowy Mita. This is ghostly Mita, and we meet her... Oh, that was unintentional, man. What the hell? In the next room, as our surroundings warp around us. Crazy Mita's been here. She's taken this Mita's face and therefore her identity, and this one's fallen deep into despair after she forgot who she was. Yeah, pretty messed up. She aimlessly wanders around the room when we come in, and it's our job to find these scraps of paper jotted around the room while avoiding her. Otherwise, we'll be corrupted by the shadowy visage. She's not actively hostile, and she obviously doesn't mean to hurt us, but her corrupted self is still dangerous to us. So, despite how heartbreaking it might be to watch her wander around completely lost in despair, we have to just carry on. After gluing the scraps back together, we hand the photo over to Ghosty Mita, who returns to her physical form, just without her face. She then gives us permission to look in the wardrobe before turning away from us, hiding herself once more. It's honestly a shame we couldn't do much more to help her, but it really sets in stone just how evil Crazy Mita can get, ripping away entire identities from other Mitas or cutting off access to their versions to leave them to rot. It's pretty sadistic. Upon venturing through the wardrobe...
Piss.
Yeah, we're back with these things again so soon, unfortunately, and this segment is probably the hardest in the game, at least for me anyway. It's just the same red light, green light type gameplay, but through narrow corridors and new dummies hiding around every corner, forcing you to micromanage a bunch of them. Now, sure, given the corridor light layout, they just funnel in together, but some are more aggressive than others, evidenced by the red glowing eyes, and therefore are harder to keep under control when you have to keep turning away to see where you're going and stop other dummies in their paths. In my few run-throughs this area so far, including my own time, this section has always taken me a few attempts, to the point I now dread it in fear I might just not overcome it. Of course, I do, and there's nothing wrong with a bit of difficulty, but combined with my general fear / hatred of the Weeping Angel type enemy, this place is a solid -5 stars out of 5 on TripAdvisor. Hoo boy, well, anyway, after that moment of unbridled dread in my soul, we reach another moment of downtime, and what a place to see after the horrors prior. This is Sleepy Mita's place, who you can see on the bed over there. And just... this place, man, it's so nice. The atmosphere here is such a vibe and immediately puts you at ease. It's like the devs knew this section prior would be overwhelmingly stressful for a lot of players. You know those reels, shorts, what may have you that are like, you haven't slept in 10,000 years, where are you sleeping? Yeah, this is one of those places, and I would sleep here in a heartbeat and subsequently get the best night's sleep I've ever had. And it's here where I want to get into MiSide's pacing. The whole idea of segmented gameplay where it's scares, downtime, may not work for a lot of people, but for me it does. See, a lot of horror games put reliance on some enemy constantly chasing you down, to put you on edge and make you dread any moment you might mess up and the thing catches you, and while MiSide has that in Crazy Mita, it's not like she's actively following you through versions, more just periodically stalking you, messing with you in a psychological sense. Like, what if this is where she finally strikes? That approach, I feel, is a better way to keep a player on edge than being constantly hunted down. Plus, I think it's important to have downtime to let what you've seen sit with you for a moment. If it's just go all the time, the fear, I feel, doesn't resonate as hard. Like, imagine you gotta work around Crazy Mita while also working around Ghosty Mita. The former just becomes another obstacle, and the latter doesn't get the focus needed to lay out the impact the former's had. Sure, I guess Crazy Mita could taunt you, saying stuff like, look what I've done to her, as a way to get it across, but that wouldn't be effective in this case, with the quiet horror here making the moment. The horror genre is multifaceted, it isn't always just jump scares and gore. Back to our moment of sanctity, we have to wake the Sleeping Beauty up so she can help us with the switches outside the front door. But no matter how hard we try, she doesn't want to budge. Real. That is, unless we make her a coffee, which, fine, all coffee tastes like dirt, same with tea, but you do you. There's this little pumpkin puzzle we can find in the kitchen as well. All you have to do is light them in sequential order with the lights going out if you get one wrong, but after enough trial and error, you should get it, and subsequently unlock the vampire outfit, which is what you've been seeing most of the Mitas wearing up to this point. I didn't get this on my first try, which is a shame because it's objectively the best one, Bite me, mummy. But it is what it is. You can feel free to copy me here, though the order they light is randomised for every playthrough, but if there's a chance, you know. After giving her the dirt water, Sleepy Mita drags herself out of bed, and right into a chair where she falls asleep again. Phenomenal. Forcing her up again, she then keels over on the cold floor in the living room, followed by her falling asleep standing up in the hallway, before she finally helps us pull the levels in sync to access the button behind the door. And then, like the incredibly sleepy girl she is, she immediately falls asleep in the chair beside the door. Admittedly, I feel bad for just leaving her in the chair. It would have been nice for the game to give us the option to help her back to her bed, but I'm sure she'll find her way back eventually. Right? Once we press the big red button, which is always a good idea and has never led to anything catastrophic in media, we get spaghettified into another dimension, a 2D one. Channeling DDLC, we're suddenly in a visual novel setting, all with more in-depth descriptions of stuff and genuinely beautifully drawn stills, where we meet 2D Mita. Yep, that's her name. Not a creative one, but it gets her personality across. She's flat. Somehow, she's stolen our ring and is anything but keen on immediately giving it back, preferring to tease us and wager it in a game of noughts and crosses. However, during our Thinking Man's game, a loud, sharp knocking is suddenly heard on the other side of the door. Breaking through time and space, Crazy Mita shows up, still as 3D and unhinged as ever. She's finally found us again, and it's going to stop at nothing from now on. In a hurry, we grab 2D Mita's hand and run into a creepy hallway. 2D Mita gives us back the ring and explains how she can't come any further due to the limitations of our world. Very cosmic horror if you ask me. But before we get the chance to say anything else, we get recalled back to the start of the visual novel. But it turns out that's not us this time, as we have our physical body back and are just standing in this random girl's room. After her little tumble, oof, you right girl? She rightly questions how we even got here before introducing herself as Mila. Not Mita, Mila. She's different to the other Mitas, and she's going to be sure to let you know about it. Yeah, she's an interesting one. Your average pick-me girl, I guess, with the way she does her best to stand out from the other Mitas. There's a bit of an existential crisis with this one, honestly, but we'll get to that. She's also a tsundere, because of course she is. In all fairness, she is cute, but she's no Cappie, damn it. And what above all will help me if I ever fall for a tsundere? There's something to be said about how I prefer Cappie's default to Mila's more arguably in-depth personality, but I don't know, man, reset or not, I'd love Cappie in every universe. I might add, this version looks beautiful. I've always been a sucker for sunset lighting, and it's no different here with the soft hues of orange coming through the windows, combined with the dim lighting in the rooms and specks of light you can see floating around. It's so pretty. In fact, the entire game in MiSide is a beautiful one. It's simplistic in a lot of areas, but there is beauty in simplicity sometimes. And when the game wants to, which is often, you can really turn out the dial for areas to give them their own unique feel. Like the hostile version of the house that appears in Chapter 3, laying on the feeling of unease with its darkened lighting combined with looming danger. The tundra walkway in Chapter 9, and its, well, just overall look. Chapter 11 with its oh so comfy vibes of the best night's sleep you'll ever have, and here in Chapter 13. Besides lighting, from the little items you can find scattered around to even how the models for every version of Mita looks, just in general, MiSide is a beautiful game that bathes in something called cozy horror. Two genres that heavily contrast and should not work in theory, but in the cases where it does, and this is one of them, it's always executed super well. And sure, while most cozy horror games lean one way or another, usually towards the latter, MiSide is kind of 50-50 on it, and I think it works surprisingly well, perfect for the whole letting things sit with you approach that I mentioned earlier. Back to Miss Pick-Me Girl herself, this is probably the lengthiest chapter we've had with any of the Mita variants so far, besides Crazy Mita obviously, which spanned over 3 chapters almost. Our job is to leave the version and continue to the core, as it always has been to this point, but in trying to walk out the door, we're met with an infinite void of our unbothered face. It was never going to be that easy, so what we have to do instead is find these black holes located around the house that have us play a minigame to collapse them. Each one of these is unique and they're all pretty fun. More evidence to the fact that the iHasso dev team might be overqualified in the best way possible. It's not in otherwise straight line through the chapter though, as after each one we get a cute interaction with Mila in different scenarios, like walking in on her when she's in the shower. Even though the game pushed us to, I am so sorry girl. We do get to see her in a different outfit, wearing a towel and slippers, which is something because she's one of the few variants that can't wear any of the outfits you unlock, speaking more to the whole thing about being unique. After the second one, which happened to be in the bathroom anyway, so our walking in wasn't completely for no reason, she's disappeared on us again, now hiding under the kitchen table reading her books. An interesting place to read. Personally, I'd read while lying on the bed or something, but you do you girl, you're just so unique. We startle her and she ends up hurting herself again, blaming us for it, but then she starts to get a little clingy. The classic tsundere asks us to maybe stay and read with her. We can't though, as he figured, and we go and solve the third puzzle, where after, Mila's about to go full anime in this thoughtful gentleman here. Incredible. Turns out it was pre-cut though, a classic magical illusion which she folds on revealing to us basically immediately, with absolutely no pressure from us. We do ask why Mila doesn't just snap her fingers for things to just happen like Crazy Mita has been shown doing, and she reveals she just wants to do things herself, yearning for a sense of independence and activism, just like how the books she reads describe. And you know, I kind of relate to that, with the problematic wave of interest in AI from the most boring people alive in the past few years that is designed to just do everything for you, including stuff it absolutely shouldn't, like art, because that defeats the purpose of art at that point. I don't want stuff to just do everything for me. I want to do stuff myself to feel human. That's not to say just because you can't do something it doesn't make you human. What matters is you try, or at least have the desire to. We have a final minigame to play, and after, Mita is doing push-ups on the floor, even showing off that she can do it with no hands. For what it's worth, she did hold it for a couple of seconds. Our mission is over, however, and as we try to leave, Mita pleads with us one more time to stay with her, if just for a little longer, until we point out that crazy Mita isn't exactly patient, and then Mita crashes out, saying how much she hates her and has her own existential crisis about whether she'll ever escape, playing into existential horror, something DDLC bathes in with the likes of Monica and her motivations. We have to leave though, like, we really don't have a choice. Walking through the door into a less than inviting hallway, similar to one we were in temporarily with 2D Mita, we take a few steps forward and hear the intimidating sound of a chainsaw on the other side of the door from where we came from. Turns out, crazy Mita's found us again, and she's taken no prisoners this time, straight up severing Mita and subsequently chasing after us to do the same. Like, Christ, girl! Finally retrieved it from the oven, I see. We get put into a brief chase sequence with quick time events that, if we fail, will slow us down a lot, leading Crazy Mita to impale us with the spinning knives. This section is cool, a nice change of pace, if a drastic one, and if you're struggling with the left and right choices, look for a flickering lamp. Whichever side of the cabinet it's on, that's the side you need to go to. I only picked up on that while looking through my footage, which would have been nice to know in my first playthrough. What can I say, hindsight is 2020. After a while though, our path is destroyed and followed us by some giant Mita we saw earlier. At least, I think it's the same one. She's less hostile and even seems a little shy, but it's probably her way of messing with us again. We then soon find ourselves in what looks to be the trial space from Danganronpa. Like, I'm not the only one who sees it, right? And we come face to face with Crazy Mita, who seems more and more unhinged by the second. Just look at that award-winning smile. Thousands would die for it, including me. Channeling Jigsaw, she wants to play a set of games with us, each with an increased ante, where all we have to do is just make it to the other side of the field. First, it's red light, green light, then it's hide and seek, then it's you run for your life. Well, at least until the walkway crumbles and we fall into the abyss. See? I told you she cheats! We are the main character though, so of course we're fine, but maybe that's all according to Crazy Mita's plan, as we happen to wander into a much older version of the game. So old that various objects are missing CS source. Like, damn, even the void outside is missing. That's a rookie error. Speaking as someone who's never worked in Gmod. Honestly, I think it adds to the unsettling nature of this place as an incomplete yet another abandoned version of the game. Or perhaps something else, where the code is broken and infinitely more corrupted than Tiny Mita's version because of the acts of Crazy Mita once again. I want to say that the droning track that plays while you're here is really good for setting the mood as well, and speaking of that, you probably noticed I have not mentioned the music of this game even once up until this point, despite my passion for music as an art form, and that's because none of it particularly stands out. But, to be fair, that's kind of the point, because it's all atmospheric stuff, so your attention is not meant to be drawn to it. But when you actually take the time to listen to them, it's all really good stuff. Especially the track that plays in Mina's chapter, having a weirdly nostalgic vibe to it. And, of course, the title screen music, which is just... it's so nice. Reminiscent of DDLC's menu music in a way where it gives you a false sense of security. Back to the point at hand, this version does have its own meter, but from what we're seeing so far, it's doubtful she's in good shape. And she's not. Coddled by Crazy Mita, who leaves the hunt for us once more, but given this look here, she's totally messing with us again. This is Ugly Mita. Yep, a little rude. I mean, there's beauty in the eye of the beholder, but that's just unnecessary. And she's a tragic one yet again. Just regarding the name and appearance, her code is hanging on by a thread, as her speech is littered with weird capitalization and repeating of letters, even down to how she sounds, getting across her cursed nature that's very reminiscent of Sadago Yamamura. Hell, she's even able to extend her limbs, namely her neck. She's a great instance of body horror, honestly. Speaking of that, MiSide excels so much in variety, with the way it incorporates so many different types of horror. You got Yandere horror, obviously you have existential horror, so psychological horror, or cosmic horror in other words. There are other instances of violence such as gore horror, and even the cozy horror I mentioned earlier, which is more an overall kind of thing, rather than just an instance. It really does make the game feel fresh from moment to moment, as opposed to it just being the same one and only thing the whole way through. You could argue that maybe this is a bad thing, not allowing for any of those instances to really get the time they deserve, but honestly, for the time they're given and what exactly is given more priority than others, like with how the cosmic horror slowly sets in for Mina's chapter, I think MiSide handles it well. Something I want to bring attention to, Ugly Mita here, or Creepy Mita, whichever you prefer. Because of her unstable code, Crazy Mita actually uses her to her advantage. letting her have easy access to the other versions. You can see this in Ugly Mita's character profile after you collect her little cartridge ring. Oh, right, I was going to leave it until I got to the secrets, but scattered around the game, you can find the character profiles of all the Mitas in the form of these motherboard things. I don't know what they are. There's one for every Mita you encounter, so it's just a matter of finding them, which I will go over later. She wants us to find her teddy, which is over near the wardrobe in the bedroom, and I will shamefully admit that this took me forever in my initial playthrough. Like, sure, 10 minutes might not seem like a long time, but it sure as hell felt it. When we hand it back to her, we can ask her some questions, with all 6 being very good questions, mind you, but you only get to ask her 3 before she then starts hunting you down. This opens up the door to some replayability, which you've already seen so far in optional dialogue and such, so that's always nice. Before you read her character profile, you can pick up some lore about Ugly Mita by asking the questions, such as how she says she's the original Mita, which, given the version of the game, that adds up. That's about it though for stuff that isn't just her trying to string together a sentence because she then snaps her neck and then starts hunting you after she recognises you're a crazy Mita's target. Outrunning her is easy, but she instant transmissions, so you gotta obey her twice and then run through to where the bathroom would be, which leads you to a long corridor that has Kai Mita waiting at the end. Where have you been this entire time? Like, damn, could have used your help in places. Never mind that though, because here we are at the core finally. This laser grid thing protects it, and only we can walk through. But before that, we have the chance to catch up with Kai Mita a little. Like, ask her where she was this entire time. A valid question, including about how the ring immediately took us into an infinite looping hallway after she reprogrammed it. More about the ring, and if there's even anything good about it. And there is, it's easy to wear, and what Crazy Mita even wants from us, which is to trap our soul in a cartridge because no one ever wants to stay with her. I'll be real, there's a certain demographic of people who would be into the idea of staying with a crazy girlfriend, so why didn't she just go after that market? Is she stupid? Well, either way, we're here now, and we gotta find a way to reset Crazy Mita. Of course, it's not easy because we need multiple passwords to get there, including the character index, which Kai Mita doesn't know, but there's also this strange android that's watching over our every move, bearing a strong resemblance to the Mita character model. This is Core Mita, and there's very little on what this version of Mita is exactly, but I like to think this is what all the other Mita's code is based on, like the original string of code personified. One thing to note here, there's actually a minigame you can find on this computer, Quadrangle. All you gotta do is shoot a clearance for your Tetranomo thing here to fit when the blocks fall from the top. Sounds easy, but I'm ass at it because I'm not a real gamer. There's an achievement connected to surviving every wave because, of course it is. Nonetheless, we're SOL, so reconvening with Kai Mita, we discuss what to do next, but we also have the option to ask more lore stuff, like about the Chibis we've been sporadically running into. It turns out, these are just things the Mitas can create, being projections of themselves. So with that said, does that mean the Chibi Mita that helped us with the key way earlier is a projection of a Mita we haven't met? Or is she perhaps just another character? Well, considering she can talk and even name dropped her character file, I think that's pretty obvious, but the same can be asked about the Chibi we ran into before boarding the cable car, honestly. And in fact, the Chibi Mita we were interacting with at the start in the game, before we got sucked in, was actually a projection of Crazy Mita, so yeah, pretty cool foreshadowing on that one. Kai Mita asks that we wait here as she goes back to try and retrieve Crazy Mita's character index, but she seems to be taking a while because we straight up took a nap while waiting for her. Disobeying her orders, we go and search for Kai Mita, and we're back to the current version of the game, so we can only hope Crazy Mita is nowhere near. We find our phone in the kitchen. Yeah, remember we had a phone? I wonder what would have happened if we tried phoning our parents or something while we were in here. And I gotta say, this is an incredible bit of psychological horror, giving you the perspective of something or someone as you're controlling their movement towards where you are, but having nothing happen immediately is really good. It's all punctuated by Crazy Mita seemingly pulling us through realities. Have we established by this point that Crazy Mita is reality level? Does this mean she can beat Homelander? Or even ask, anyone in fiction can. She throws us back in the chair and monologues about how, despite players initially wanting to stay with her, as soon as she bares her fangs or shows another side of herself, they cower and run. And you know, I kinda empathise with her. You see it a lot. Someone likes another person for the perceived image they've presented themselves with that person, but when reality doesn't reflect that image, things can fall apart. However, when the part you're hiding is that you're dangerously obsessed and will go through others to keep you around, yeah, it becomes difficult to empathise at that point. She brings in Ugly Mita and uses her as another example of this, an example we can speculate she's made herself, and asks us whether we think she's beautiful or not. Spoiler, it's an illusion of choice, and Crazy Mita threatens to keep us for herself, likely as one of her cartridges before leading in and doing some ASMR. ASMR always makes me uncomfortable, man. And then she bogs us. Wonderful. Some creepy imagery of Crazy Mita is projected into our mind, taunting us about how the boring life outside the game is, and maybe she has a point. What follows is a depressing few minutes of the ins and outs our guy goes through every day. Wake up, get dressed, eat food, do work, get ready for bed, then go to sleep. All of that, 4 times in a row with only slight differences, namely the speed at which the days pass, until it thankfully fast forwards to the 1,000-day mark. An instance of mundane horror. Great! Like, surely this can't be all life is, right? And Crazy Mita believes that, through the multiple times she's offered us freedom, even though it's freedom with a cat. I swear to you, that jump scare gets me every time. Sorry to not warn you about it, but I think that gets it across more. There are insane etchings all over the wall now, along with a new app on our desktop that we click on, and we're playing ourselves. Will this be fourth wall horror? I'm not too sure. We're going deeper though, Leo, as every time we interact with the PC, we go another layer in, until Crazy Mita is just sitting idly in our chair, where she gives us another lecture about the doldrums of the life we experience, but we're having none of it as we're more focused on how messed up she is. She sends us back to our reality, kinda, where her beautiful smile is plastered upon our desktop. Again, award-winning. She pulls a Sadako on us and forcibly pushes us onto the bed, say less mommy, and chloroforms our eyes, I guess, and we wake up in some basement cage we first found Mita in way back at the start. My, how the turns have tabled. She unlocks the cage for us and goes on ahead back to the core. However, as we make our way back to the house, we hear a bunch of bang and a scream. Uh-oh, it seems Mita's a little light-headed. Awful jokes aside, this is quite a violent scene, huh? This marks the second time Crazy Mita's offed one of the others in front of us, or at least shown her efforts. Mita's body just despawns after a while, and everything seemingly goes back to normal. Admittedly, the despawning animation looks a bit goofy and takes you out of the moment, and also leads you to question whether the devs of the in-universe game knew something like this would happen. First, if so, that's some next level foresight, and second, what the hell is wrong with you to program a possibility like that in? No matter, we go looking around again and find Mita okay in her bedroom. Alright, not quite. She's had her memories reset and has reverted to her default character. With this less than favourite reset method in mind, I assume Mita respawns shortly after her demise, probably with her unique sense of identity completely gone, erasing all of her efforts to stand out, and leads me to wonder, is this how Cappie's character got reset? Or did Crazy Mita somehow find her way to the core and reset her character? Given how Mitas can't access the core and how Crazy Mita is, well, crazy, I'm doubtful of the latter. My poor sweet Cappie, what could she have done to you? When I find out, I will shred her being down to its last atom. Well, despite her character reset, somehow she's still holding on to Crazy Mita's character index and the ring. Feels like divine intervention that, but nevertheless we go back to the core and input everything, which causes Core Mita to actually emerge from her pod and face us down. By the way, before you input the index, you can play a harder version of Quadrangle that I'm not even going to attempt. Approaching Core Mita, she'll grab us and throw us half a mile back into reality. Say less, Android Mommy. And we've done it. Everything seems to be back to normal. We encounter Crazy Mita, or just current Mita now, I guess, in the kitchen. She seems chill, oddly bland honestly, but that's probably because it's such a contrast to her previous self, but that's not important because we're not quite done yet. The exit is blocked by server walls, I guess, and all we have to do now is go down to the basement and secure our exit by inputting our character code. Yep, our own character code. Makes sense, I guess. After this, we're free. We can finally escape the surprisingly cozy housecape. While Mita does fall victim to her code of wanting us to stay, everything seems like it will be just fine. Unfortunately, Mita remains the same. Crazy as ever. Mita is Mita, after all. Hell, is she even Mita? She's clearly just masquerading as one. Perhaps she's something else entirely, like a rogue entity of something that's not supposed to be there. Kind of like the being in I'm Scared. Maybe not though, I am very stupid. With that though, we're done with the main game of MiSide. We're not quite done yet though, because as I've alluded to a bunch of times, like any incredible game, there are tons of secrets throughout. Be that of lore or just fun Easter eggs, and I think I want to get into those right away. So without further ado, the best way I can start this, the character profiles you can find jotted around the game. Besides the profiles for the different Mitas, there are a ton of player profiles too. So to start with the Mitas, the first one is for the Mita herself, which you get upon starting the game. The second is for Cappie, which you can find on top of the TV in the kitchen in her chapter. The third is for Tiny Mita, which you can find on the table next to her on the 17th loop of Loop. The fourth is Chibi Mitas, which can be found by the little cactus in her chapter. The fifth is for Shorthead Mita, and can be found in a drawer after the first encounter with the aggressive dummies. The sixth is for the mannequins, which one of the deactivated dummies is holding before you go up the ladder in the Dummies and Forgotten Puzzles chapter, which is the same chapter Ghostly Mitas can be found in the little cubbies next to her PC when you get to her room. For the eighth, that's for Sleepy Mita, and that can be found in the bathroom above the vent in her chapter. The ninth is 2D Mitas, and it's a little more unique. Just choose to check the kitchen first when going to search for her, and click it on the little drawer to collect it. The 10th is for Mila. I had already picked it up, but it would be on this table in the living room otherwise. Next up is Creepy Meters, and that's just next to the fruit bowl missing its textures in the old version chapter. Second to last is Kind Meters, which is just behind her on the desk in the Reboot chapter. And finally is Core Meters, which you have to select the Get Flash Drive option in the top level functions submenu on the computer to get it. That was a lot, but collecting all of them is worth it because you get some really cool character insight and lore, which is the same case for the player profiles, but less so in my opinion because we never see them. Besides that one guy I mean, but you get what I'm saying. As for those player profile locations, you start with your player characters, but as for the rest of them, the first one can be found on the shelf in the basement chapter, the second can be found on top of a random white box in the Beyond the World chapter if you walk left for a little bit in the looping hallway, the third can be found on this little table at the entrance in the loop on the 14th loop, the fourth can be found on top of the shelf of the bookcase in the far left corner after the part with Chibi meets in her chapter, the fifth can be found on the top shelf of the bathroom here in Mila's chapter, the sixth on the box missing its textures in Creepy Meter's room next to a PC in the old version chapter, the seventh can also be found in this chapter on top of a blue bucket when you enter the core, the eighth is on the nightstand here in the Being Candid chapter, and the final one will be on the little console here in the basement of Reboot. Admittedly, a couple of these are interesting, like Player 4 and Player 8, the former especially with the mention of cosplaying as Mita, like that's really cute. But in all honesty, they are all worth a read. A couple even mention other Mita variants, like how Player 3 mentions a flower Mita, and how Player 7 mentions a ballerina Mita. To think, there are potentially hundreds of other Mitas we could have met. I don't know about you, but I like the idea of Infinite Money Glitch Mita. And you know what, while I said I was about to get into secrets, and though I partially did with the profiles there, I'm not going to go further because I want to leave the game with some mystique for your own playthrough. The thrill of the hunt is part of the fun after all. Some may be more obscure than others, but there's plenty here to sink your teeth into. So with enough time, or a guide if you really want, you'll find them all. Plus, if that's not enough for you, you can always mod the game. You can have Cappie chasing you around the entire game, you can save Rayman from the clutches of Ubisoft, you can wake up Springtrap from his 30-year slumber, or you can spend time with the best girl in all of media, Godzilla. I don't know what to say, this is just absolute cinema. Oh, great Mita help me if I ever figure out how to end one of these, but if you haven't gathered, to summarize, I think incredibly highly of MiSide. It's honestly up there for one of my favourite horror games of all time because of how unique as an experience it is, blending multiple types of horror into one surprisingly delicious smoothie that, on the surface, really shouldn't have worked but did, and super well. And while I still think Monica is the more interesting antagonist when it comes to her situation, the way Mita revels in hers, even coming out on top at the end because she's an absolute girl boss, man, she's peak I fear. Two queens can exist at one time though, so don't forget that. Horror games have this issue of replayability for me, where unless there are different endings or secrets to discover, because you've already experienced the horrors and know what to expect, they can lose that interest to play them again. However, MiSide offers those things in spades, and even after combing through the secrets in my own time, I'm still willing to replay this one just because of how interesting and fun the core experience is. Truly, I was living in Mita's world all along, and I was fully aware of it.